Okay, so I got drafted in the inaugural BDSP Premier League, which is a team tournament in which you play other teams with one member of your team playing in each of the BDSP tiers from Uber down to NU, although with 3 OU slots. But I signed up for my native NU, which is the only BDSP tier that I know how to play slash like. And in the first week, I was on the bench, but this week, last week even, because by now it's Thursday and I played this on Sunday, last week I started, and so I was up against Mentsmeet, who is a phenomenally strong player, but the kind of advantage that I have is that I try hard in this tier, and he doesn't, and also he's kind of really busy with a bunch of other team tours, and so while he kind of is just getting given a team, showing up and playing the game, I'm try harding and I'm in the lab and I'm prepping and I'm testing and I'm team building and all that kind of shit. And that is kind of my advantage here, looking at the team's matchup, because as someone that has done a bit more of this tier, the team that Mentsmeet has got, I think if I was given it, I would have gone, this is a shit team, give me a new one. Because, firstly, look at the team and look at Whiscash. If I was a Dragon Dance Whiscash, then you just win on the spot, because there is no switching to it, there is no answer to it. The things that can take a hit, like Regirock, just can't threaten it back. Whiscash isn't the most ubiquitous Morn in NU by any stretch, but it is a thing that exists and you really don't want to be this horrendously weak to it. It also really, really struggles against Porygon 2, which, I mean, every NU team that doesn't have jank like Probopass or Wormadam Steel does. But even so, you need more insurance against it than what you've got. And lastly, Misdreavus just isn't a Pokemon in this tier. It's just not good. And the reason that it's there is because before it got banned, Haunter was a staple on spike stacking teams, because all of its switch-ins, like your Scumtanks and your Lanterns, they hate spikes, and so Haunter just does really well. And Misdreavus here on Mentsmeet's team is just trying to kind of replicate that, but it just doesn't work. And that's because, firstly, you lose the poison typing. Having Sludge Bomb is really nice. Secondly, you hit like a wet noodle. 85 special attack, Shadow Ball, only an 80 base power move. It just really isn't strong. You don't even have to be bulky to be shrugging off those hits, because it just is so fucking weak. And lastly, as a choice scarfer, it isn't very good because it gets outsped by every other prominent choice scarfer in the tier. Typhlosion, Jinx, Scyther, Electivire, all of these things are just outrunning and killing you, and so it really doesn't work. But matchup-wise, I'm seeing how good my Whiscash is, which is actually a Rest Talk Spadef Whiscash, which is the best answer to Expert Belt Typhlosion in the tier, because that thing with an Expert Belt can lure and hit Lantern hard with Earthquake, and is just really good at dismantling teams. But I bought Whiscash to be more insured against that, and sure enough, there's a Typhlosion. It's working. That's very cool. And looking at the matchup, I know that I just need to get Porygon 2 in against the Sandslash, against the Regirock, and just force progress with some very powerful download boosted specs attacks. And then once I've done that, the combination of Scyther and Electivire can just kind of run through the opposing team. And for what I'm worried about on Mentsmeet's side, I didn't in the preview kind of clock on to the Misdreavus being most likely the Scarfer. And so I was actually thinking that if that thing is a substitute nasty plot type thing, it could get a bit hairy, because Probopass is my switch in, but it has no way of breaking a substitute. So that could get kind of dicey. But with what Mentsmeet's team turns out to be, essentially what they would have had to do to win is that Kangaskhan gets really, really threatening if it can break past the Gligar. And it can almost do that. Double Edge does like 45. And so what they've got to do is get your rocks up, keep them up, get Kangaskhan in, and just fire off powerful attacks. Because once the Gligar goes down, everything else is dying to the combination of Earthquake and Double Edge. And so while honestly, it's a bit of an outside shot, I'd say that is how they would win this game. Because every other threat I have under control. Because Swords Dance Quillfish, really scary into this team that has no water resist, but turns out they're a defensive spikes set, leaving only Kangaskhan to make progress, because on this kind of team, you want Typhlosion to be making progress, but Whiscash just completely puts a stop to that. So I've been rambling for too long, and I could probably cut it down, but also, what the fuck am I going to do? Edit? No, and I can't be asked to start again. So with that, we're going to get into the game. So I lead Whiscash as they go Quillfish, and I'm leading Whiscash just because I'm thinking, okay, well, you have nothing that forces Whiscash out. This is, while it isn't the best matchup into everything, it can stay in on anything, and I'm not immediately getting forced out and being put on the back foot. And so I'm kind of vibing. And they lead Quillfish. And so, obviously, I'm getting the better of that because I can Earthquake it. But my thoughts are that, still kind of thinking it's a Swords Dance Quillfish, even though it led, and it probably is, I maybe could have surmised that it's a Spiker. I'm thinking, okay, well, that's really good into me. You're not going to just throw it out. So I almost don't need to Earthquake because I know you won't. And additionally, if you're a Spikes lead, which was my other consideration, you'll be Focus Sash anyway. And so I won't kill you with Earthquake. So I just need to break the Sash. So I feel very free in just Scalding here. And that ends up working out fucking amazingly for me, as they go hard into the Kangaskhan that threaten me so much and get burnt by a Scald turn 1. And yeah, it's a bit jammy to burn, but when you're Whiscash switching as Kangaskhan, you kind of deserve it. And I am intensely vibing. The thing that threatened my whole team so much is burnt on the first turn, and it's no longer a threat. And I think the reasoning from Mincemeat is that, expecting me to be Dragon Dance, you can't just stay in on passive spiking Quillfish, because you could Scald me, and if you don't burn me, then you just lose, and I could be Lumberry anyway. And so, to prevent just getting 6-0'd straight out the gate, you need to go Kangaskhan, fake me out, double edge me, just hit me hard before I can DD too many times, and just get kind of out of control. Which, again, is just speaking to the problem with this, in my opinion, pretty shit team that he's got, that you have to resort to that to answer Whiscash. But anyway, I get the burn. I am really, really vibing. And so I go Probopass, and I'm absorbing a double edge, but the reason that I go into this, even though I could get Earthquakes before the Gligar, is because it occurred to me that if you're gonna risk effectively your win con that flagrantly on the first turn, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe you're packing Facade. And it is kind of unlikely, and Kangaskhan already has bad enough 4 move slot syndrome without Facade that it's more unlikely. But I just kind of thought, okay, well, before I just go hard Gligar, it instantly crumples, and then something like a Swords Dance Sandslash can mess me up. Let's just be a bit careful, and we can pivot into Gligar on the Earthquake that we get next turn. So Probopass comes in, and then they make a double to Quillfish as I go Gligar. And I think they're just hoping that they can get Quillfish on something like a Rocks on the Probopass and start laying spikes. But it does work out for them because Quillfish is obviously pretty good into Gligar. But at this point, I'm still thinking, okay, Swords Dance Quillfish fucks me up. And so I just stay in and I Earthquake into it. And I don't really mind that the Mistreverse is coming in dodging that because, again, it's a fucking Mistreverse. It doesn't threaten me in the slightest. And I felt like I needed to stay in an Earthquake, because if they were to try and get cute and Swords Dance on a Switch, then I'm in really big trouble. And also, I do live an unboosted Life Orb Waterfall, and so I can just get that damage that I need on the Quillfish to not lose on the spot. But they go Mischievous, and I'm just kind of like, okay, whatever, Probopass. If you want to like be funny and substitute, fine, I can Volt Switch out, go Scyther, U-turn, break the sub, and be fine, and just kind of scope out what you want to do. And now once I'm in, I'm thinking, okay, well, Sandslash sits on Probopass forever, one of the big problems of Probopass in this tier. But that's kind of fine, because I can just go for the rocks on the Switch, and then you kind of, with your Typhlosion in the back, you have to spin, and I can just go into something freely on your spin, whatever. But they go Quillfish instead to get spikes up. And I stay in because it still hasn't occurred to my dumb ass at this point that it's a spike setting Quillfish. And so I'm again thinking, okay, well, if you Swords Dance, I can Volt out, get a bit of damage, hopefully not lose to you. Probopass isn't that important anyway. And so I get the Volt Switch, and from calcing, I learn that that is a max HP defensive Quillfish. And so it isn't going to be desperately threatening my P2, which can just come in on it. And while I get poisoned, I'm also immediately forcing mega progress, because I get my special attack off the download. Happy days. You have no psychic resists. I'm going to just hit something really fucking hard. And I do. Regirock takes 46. And the Spadef drop is lucky, but also similar to the Kangaskhan getting burnt. It's just like, okay, sure, you're unlucky, but the reason that you have to make a play that risks that happening is because your team is shit. And so with a better team, you're not in a position where your Regirock getting Spadef drop by a Psychic immediately means that you have nothing that can take a hit off my Porygon. And the Regirock is pretty important, because without it, my Scyther and my Electivire are just going to kind of run through the whole team. And so that's why Mensmeet is just sacking the Kangaskhan instead. Though I kind of feel like you probably should have just sacked the Kangaskhan immediately, because even if I were to just try attack, I still would have done a pretty big chunk to that Regirock. But now they go Sandslash, and I think at this point, Mensmeet just isn't respecting the P2, because there's two things that can happen here. The first is that if you're defensive Sandslash, I outspeed you, and I hit you really hard, and then Electivire is vibing. The second is that if you're an offensive Sandslash, because P2 is still reasonably bulky, I live an Earthquake, and you just drop. Because Sandslash is never like Life Orb or Soft Sand or anything. They're always leftovers. They pretty much have to be to have like any defensive utility. And so I feel very comfortable just staying in and killing it. And so they Rapid Spin, they disrespect the P2, and for their disrespect, they just fucking drop, and I'm 6-4 up. And I am really intensely vibing. This is great. And at this point, it's pretty much just like, I've won, provided I don't find some kind of new and innovative way to shit myself. And so the Typhlosion's going to come in. And sure, it can erupt, but guess what? Spadef Whiscash does not give a shit. 23. And a Lantern at this point could be getting Earthquake for half, but the Typhlosion, it can't touch me at all. And I know that he knows that there's no way the Typhlosion can threaten me. And so I figure, well, you're going to be switching, and you can't go Quillfish or Regirock because I just hit them super effectively. So you've got to go Mischievous here. And so I just go Probopass to Volt out on it. And the other reason that I was able to just throw Probopass into what could have been an Earthquake or Focus Blast is that, again, it's Probopass. It's not really contributing all that much this game. If it does go down, then, like, whatever, pretty much. And so Mischievous comes in, and as they go Regirock, I could have vaulted for momentum, but I just get my rocks up because their spinner is dead, they have a Typhlosion, it just feels like a useful thing to do. And because I've got a bit of speed investment in this Probopass, I'm able to just outrun it, vault out, dodge the Earthquake, happy days. And then as they go mischievous to the only thing they have that can dodge an Earthquake, I just U-turn out because I was thinking, well, worst case is what? You stay in, I can U-turn out into Whiscash, take negative damage off the Stone Edge, which is all you can really hit me with. Explosion makes no sense on a full health Gligar because it's not the thing that you need dead anyway, and it'll do barely half probably. So I get that right, I U-turn out, and I go into Electivire. And now here's the kind of funny bit where I do some calcing, and I fuck up, but it works out for me. So I calc how much a Wild Charge does to Mischievous, and I get 50-60%. And I'm going, hang on, that's really low. That's kind of weird. But I just kind of brush it off. I go, Electivire, you piece of shit. Not noticing that I was calcing against Mischievous with an Eviolite, which doesn't exist in BDSP. So I just go, oh, right, well, whoops, let's just Volt Switch out then. And then I can just go back into Probopass, Volt again, and just kind of keep up the Vortex. But it's a good thing that I made that fuck up because they Destiny Bond. And so they would have just died and killed my Electivire, and I still would have won, but a bit less convincingly. And that lets me just go Probopass again, and because their Choice Scarf, as you can see by them outspeeding my Electivire, they're locked into that. And so there's not really anything they can do as I just Volt Switch again. And so they just kind of have to go Regirock. I Volt out, and I'm able to just bring big Whiscash straight back in and continue vibing and continue refusing to die. So they're going Quillfish, as I can just scold really, really freely, and I get a burn for good measure, which is cool. And at this point, the Quillfish is just going to set its spikes again because scolding is kind of pointless because it'll do 15% and can't even burn me because I'm already poisoned. And I could have just Earthquaked to kill it here, but I end up resting. And I do that because I'm just kind of thinking, okay, well, it's really, really in my hands. Is there any possible way that I can choke this? And the only thing that occurred to me was if I let Whiscash get too weakened, say it scolds into me for a bit more damage, gets me reasonably low as I Earthquake and kill it, then could Typhlosion crit me, or could a Regirock Explosion crit, or if Mischievous has Energy Ball or something like that, and I manage to throw out my Whiscash, then could Typhlosion start causing problems for me. And realistically, even then, it takes Rock whenever it comes in. Scyther always outspeeds it, and it can just U-turn and wear it down to the point that Aerial Ace kills and I'm vibing. But that was my thought, is that if there's a way to let him back into the game, it's by letting Whiscash die. So I just decided to play it really, really safe, even if that means letting spikes go up. And so, because of that, the Quillfish is able to just continue spiking. But I pull the Earthquake for my Sleep Talk, which is nice. Mischievous comes back in, and I just go Probopass because even though it outsped my Electivire, it still hasn't fucking clicked to me that this thing is Scarf somehow. And so in my brain is still going, if you substitute and pop your Salak and start nasty plotting up, what if you reverse sweep me? That'd be really embarrassing. So I just go, okay, well, let's go this and Volt out and break the sub, and Scyther will still be faster because it's Scarf and naturally faster, even if it pops a Salak. 23 off a Shadow Ball, whatever, keeps Shadow Balling as I just Volt Switch out yet again, and I'm able to just go into Scyther, keep the Vortex up, kill the Mischievous, happy days, we're vibing. And at this point, I send in Gligar, which is because I want the Typhlosion out. And my reason for that is that I'm still thinking, is there any fucking way that I can throw this? And I thought, if I go Whiscash and let in the Regirock, and then I don't pull a Scald out of the Sleep Talk, and it explodes and crits me, can that fuck me? Maybe. So let's make sure Typhlosion comes in so that can't happen, so that I can eventually get Whiscash in on the Typhlosion, which doesn't have a way of just bullshitly killing me, and then I'm comfortable, which is kind of overcautious of anything, really, but oh well. And so that's going to come in, and now I just sack the Probopass to the spikes. And I could have just gone Whiscash there, but I go Scyther for a little bit of extra damage first from a U-turn. I could have just gone hard Whiscash rather than sacking the Probopass and preserve the 6-0. But I was just thinking, like, spikes into could I get crit a bunch? Let's just be uber safe, sack one thing, not keep the 6-0, make sure I win. Dodge a Focus Blast, rest in my sleep talk. None of this really matters because I win at this point, and I can just wake up, kill the Typhlosion, and then a hapless weakened Regirock is going to come in and die to Scald. So with that, I am able to win on my BDSP Premier League debut really, really comfortably against a really strong player, which I'm really psyched about, but would again just emphasize that this was very much a matchup win. And it wasn't just a matchup win, it was the other guy's team is really fucking bad win. But you know what? We take those. Thank you for watching. Hopefully I'll have my game from this week up at some point after I play it, because that's still not scheduled. Bye.